Yes. Madam Chair, we are just waiting for Commissioner Willie. And we are live when you are ready.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Thursday, November 4th, 2021 work session. This is Chair Catherine Harrington. I'm joined by Vice Chair Pam Trees, Commissioners Roy Rogers, and Commissioner Nafisa Fai. We're hoping that Commissioner Willie will be joining us soon. And first, I want to thank our staff for their flexibility. We're having a work session today because we ran out of time on Tuesday. So I really want to thank you, Sheriff Garrett, your team, as well as Assistant, Deputy County Administrator, not sure of titles. Anyway, Aaron Calvert, our very own expert in the whole portfolio of public safety and helping us all be informed, make informed decisions, and working with the full portfolio of public safety. And thank you, Brad, for joining us as well. Oh, hello, Commissioner Willie. We're just getting started. So we'll dive right in to our key topic for today's work session, and that is the Enhanced Sheriff Patrol District, also known as ESPD, Levy, including the community survey, community listening session information, and Levy proposed development. So please, Aaron Calvert and Sheriff Pat Garrett, please take it away.
Harrington for the warm welcome. Good morning, and good morning, Board of Commissioners. As mentioned, thank you for making space for us today. I know we did run out of time, so I appreciate also your flexibility in scheduling us today. So for the record, I'm Aaron Calvert with the County Administrative Office. I'm joined today by Sheriff Pat Garrett, and we are here to provide an Enhanced Sheriff Patrol District, or ESPD, presentation on the community survey, the community listening sessions, and the financial planning as it relates to the levy proposal development. And I just want to note this presentation is a highlight of the work of many staff from the Sheriff's Office, the County Administrative Office, the Office of Equity, Inclusion, Community Engagement, and Finance. Next slide. Your packet includes the Enhanced Sheriff Patrol District Community Feedback Report, this slide deck, of course, and the ESPD boundary map for reference that we like to include in these presentations for all of you and for our listening and viewing public as well. Our agenda will highlight the community listening session and community survey, and then we'll shift to some financial projections that cover the census information and impact, the assumptions used, and finally the scenario development on the projected levy increase. We'll then have time for questions and next steps. And so with that, I'm going to turn the next few slides over to Sheriff Garrett.
Thank you, Aaron. Good morning, Chair Harrington and Commissioners. In our work to do a thorough job to inform the public, to listen and acknowledge their concerns and aspirations, and also include a more diverse voice from communities that are not historically connected. We provided real-time Spanish interpretation for the listening sessions and had the slides translated into Spanish as well. Our community survey was also offered in Spanish. Both engagement opportunities regarding the listening session were heavily promoted through traditional media, social media, direct marketing, and media release. Event information was shared with community contacts through networks at the Office of Equity and Inclusion and Community Engagement, who were hugely helpful to us to do this community engagement. We were also helped by advertising through the Vision Action Network's contacts, and then through our office as well. The list of groups, media, and community-based organizations you'll find in your packet exceeded 13 pages. It includes representation from historically marginalized communities. I just want to highlight 10 of them. They include Adelante Mujeres, Bienestar, Centro Cultural, the Latino Network, the Asian Pacific American Network of Oregon, Urban League, Islamic Center of Portland, a Portland Metro multicultural media that routes news to at least 5 specifically cultural specific news outlets, the Trans Active Gender Project, and then my thanks especially to Commissioner Fye for allowing us to advertise during her October 7th town hall. The survey and listening sessions were principally about the Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District, as you know, and our timeline to get the results and report out was somewhat compressed. We acknowledge that. And so that had some limitations on some of our community's ability to tune in. We look forward to building our partnerships and deepening our work with the Office of Community Engagement because our relationship with all of our communities is enduring. It's not just about the Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District. Slide, please. Given the 2020 census demographics for Washington County, it's worth noting that our community survey overrepresented for groups that include our white community, our Black and African American community, our Native American and Alaskan Native communities, and our Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander communities. The survey respondents were underrepresented for our Latino and Asian communities. Importantly, as you can see on the far right of this slide, 11.9% of those surveyed preferred that to not identify their race. We totally get that, but that's just a segment that probably spills over into these other categories. Also, it's worth highlighting that continuing urban public safety service levels in the urban unincorporated areas really depends on voter approval at the end of the day. And the fact that almost all of those surveyed are registered voters and 81% of those surveyed vote very consistently, I think strengthens our results. They are also individuals who we need to hear from. Slide, please. The next 3 slides just provide an example of questions that were asked in the survey and the listening session. And a helpful way to consider this question is this graph, it's a perception gauge of community safety. And as you know, perceptions are formed by personal observations and experience, word of mouth, traditional media, social media. For the 29 individuals who attended the listening sessions, 82%, as you can see here, perceive their community is about as safe or less safe than 3 years ago, split right down the middle. Noteworthy, regarding the community survey, concerns expressed about feeling less safe correlate with the increase in crime we experienced in 2020. As you recall, our general fund report from last April showed our reports increased for crimes that include assault, domestic violence, stolen cars, car break-ins, and mail theft. The FBI just released last week their 2020 Uniform Crime Report, crime statistics for the year 2020, showing the overall crime rate in the urban and the unincorporated area rose 14%. So that correlates with that concern. And year to date, those increases are holding steady. Slide, please. People were invited to select all that apply when answering this question. From the following, please select issues you feel are most prevalent in your area. As you can see, the top 4 issues are nonviolent crime, which we just kind of talked about this last graph, housing insecurity, mental health, and traffic safety. You are very, very familiar with the houselessness challenge and the ongoing multi-jurisdictional work to address that challenge. And I just want to thank the Housing Authority at Washington County and HHS for inviting us to be part of that to address that very big challenge. The behavioral health rating as an issue that's most prevalent reinforces our work with our city partners in TriMet to double the number of mental health response teams that will work in Washington County from 4 to 8 across the county to complement, right? That's just a small part of the integrated network of behavioral health services offered by Washington County. For traffic safety, it's never a surprise for me to see that. Before the pandemic, during the pandemic, I can't go to a community meeting without somebody bringing up traffic safety. Slide, please. This graph shows strong support to continue or increase Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District funding as necessary to sustain public safety services in the district. Slide, please. We look forward to additional community engagement events, and we'll be asked, we're going to ask for dollars to fund interpretation and translation services to provide outreach in multilingual formats. This was a first for us, and we learned a lot and felt we engaged in a more comprehensive way. This work not only shed light on community sentiment, but we deepened our partnership with the Office of Community Engagement and of Equity and Inclusion. They were super helpful to us. We're very grateful for our partnership and their hard work. We'll continue to take advantage of their knowledge and wisdom to broaden our community engagement. Long term, we're fortunate to have interest in our partners like our Latino Advisory Commission to partner in community engagement. And we're currently in the early stages of planning a face-to-face community engagement event with one of our Latino Advisory Commissioners. So I'm sure we're going to be able to really use their knowledge and wisdom as well. So we can reach out to as much of our historically marginalized communities as possible. I think with that, I will return the baton to Erin.
Sure. So moving into the financial picture a little bit about the census. So each year we do anchor our population estimates to the Portland State University's population projections and tracking, and that every 10 years when the census is completed, those numbers get adjusted and the growth estimates get recalculated for the subsequent years. So this graph shows the Portland State University population tracking back to 2008, with the black vertical lines marking the 2010 and the 2020 census. And as you know, the 2020 census was just released in early October of this year. So the census numbers represent a reduction in population in Washington County, and especially in the urban unincorporated areas when it's compared to the prior population estimates. So due to the formula that we use on officers per 1,000 of population, this will actually reduce the number of FTE as we right size the deputies and staff to match that population. It's important to know the reduction is being handled through current vacant positions and attrition. And then over the life of the levy, which we're really already another year into, we're into 2021. And so the population estimates, if they increase, then the FTE gets adjusted again on an annual basis. Next slide, please. So this slide just illustrates that concept in more depth over the new levy period. The top graph shows you the county population forecast, and then it breaks out the ESPD and urban unincorporated population over the course of the levy, and that's that second blue highlighted line down. The middle graph just reminds you of the funding breakdown of sworn officers and shows the total officers formulated into that fund. So again, if you drop down to that blue highlight line in that graph, you can see that we'll add back 5 FTE over the course of the levy based on the current population estimates. And then that bottom graph just reminds you of the funding formula of the base or general fund and the public safety local option levy funding, which provides a base level of service. And the addition of the enhanced officers for ESPD is what makes up that 1 officer per 1,000 in the district. Next slide. So this slide illustrates the fund performance over time. It shows back to 2008. The blue bar is revenue and the orange bar is expenditure. And then the levy is broken down to the cycle years at the top of the bars. You can see that some years the revenue is higher and other years our expenditures outweigh the revenue. And you've heard us report on this before, but the takeaway is really that we manage to the fund year over year. So one year that an assessed value may dip a little bit lower than projected, or when an unplanned expense arises, we're generally able to shift within that. One example, if you look at this fiscal year, is the increase that includes body-worn camera initiative and the GTAC computer replacement. So those weren't anticipated way back when the original plan was developed. And then there's some increase in technology and things, unknown plan expenditures that contributed to that. Many years there's increased revenue that matches, and that allows us that flexibility. This last fiscal year, though, there was also unanticipated reductions in revenue, which includes less in the charges for service. We didn't realize almost $500,000 in interest earnings and other miscellaneous revenue. Next slide. This is just another view of the fund. It's related to the assessed value. So the blue bar is the dollars and the orange line is the assessed value percent change over time. And you can see in the most recent years, the assessed value in the district has been well above 4%, actually even closer to 5%. But this last year, it came in at 3.43%, which is significantly lower than projected. Next slide, please. Okay, this slide, it's a little information overload and we really debated, is this a helpful slide? But it's what the team has spent a lot of time discussing, and it's around our assumptions. And so I'm going to kind of walk you through a pretty high level, but just so that the board has some awareness of the assumptions that are being projected into this formula. Let's see. Okay, so at the top of the graph, starting on the left-hand side, that's the current levy period. That's the blue highlight. The purple highlight captures the proposed levy cycle, and then you'll see the fiscal years broken down before that. So we start with the assessed value assumption and note that the projected AV that was used to build this current levy cycle. And directly below that, you can see the levy actuals to date. Of note, for the prior 3 fiscal years, as just mentioned, the assessed value has continued to come in higher than projected, but this current fiscal year, or this current year, excuse me, it came in at 3.43%. We've projected the assessed value assumption for the next year at 4%. And then in the next levy, it's proposed at 2 years of 4.5% and the 3 subsequent years at 4.25%. The next lines down show us the permanent tax rate, which is not set to change over the next levy cycle. But of course, we're talking about the local option levy rate currently at 68 cents per thousand of assessed value, and looking at the proposed 14-cent increase to make it 82 cents per thousand of assessed value. The population growth line, we talked about this earlier. You can see that Portland State University projected a growth rate on the current levy cycle of 1.75%. And then you can see that's how our levy plan was built. Again, with the right sizing of the census numbers, you can see that we've adjusted that in the column census reset, and we've moved the projection, the estimate to match PSU's projected growth of 1.10% in all of the subsequent years for this current levy and the proposed levy. The next line of assumptions is really around the cost of living adjustment, or the COLA. And the current levy has been built with about a 2 to 2.5% projection for non-represented staff and about a 2.25 to 3.5% projection for WCPOA employees. The actuals in both categories vary slightly above and below, but they probably average out. But what I wanted to note is the trending COLA projection for this next fiscal year, which is nearly 5.5%. That said, we're assuming still a 2.5% COLA projection for the next levy period. And then the next 2 sections, I won't go into the details unless there's questions, but it really is just about the assumptions that we need to build into the formula around the PERS and the retirement rates, and then the health insurance premiums too. Next slide, please. This slide just breaks down the levy supported positions by classification, as well as certified officers and non-sworn personnel. It provides the estimated additions of deputies and a sergeant based on the population projections that we currently have. And it's just another note, just to bring attention that beginning in the first year of the levy cycle, there are about 140 FTE attached to the levy funding. Next slide, please. So given the assumptions we've just reviewed, we are projecting a 14-cent increase for the ESPD replacement levy. The top chart reviews the current levy average home assessed value and growth, and then breaks down the annual and monthly cost with an average 5-year cost. The bottom chart outlines the same estimates and projections for an average home value and growth rate over the next levy cycle, and then breaks down an annual and monthly cost with an average 5-year projection as well. The proposed increase of 14 cents results in a proposed levy cost for the average homeowner as an increase of about $85.80 annually, which breaks down to about $7.15 per month. Next slide, please. So one of the goals of managing the levy fund is to ensure that we have an adequate fund balance or cash flow at the end of the levy. And this gets us from the end of the fiscal year to that period of tax collection. In previous conversations with the board, you've provided direction on having between 3 and 5 months of fund balance available. So the left bar shows you the fund balance for the scenario we just reviewed. It would be a 14-cent increase and then keeping the assessed value as currently noted. The middle bar is the fund balance impact if the levy replacement is 14 cents, but the assessed value assumption is reduced to 4% over the life of the levy. So this would provide $2.3 million less in ending fund balance than the prior scenario and about 3.5 months of fund balance total. And then the bar on the right answers the frequently asked questions, what does a penny do? If we were to replace the levy and increase it by 15 cents in keeping with all of the assumptions that we've reviewed today and not adding any services, it would increase the ending fund balance by about 1.3 million, providing about 5 months of expenses. Next slide, please. That's really the review of the finals. We have a couple more slides on timeline, but I want to pause here and just ask, what questions does the board have? Are you comfortable with the assumptions? Do you support a 14-cent increase, or would you like us to prepare any additional scenarios?
Commissioners, questions? Commissioner Rogers, go ahead.
Pat, I can probably guess the reason, but going back to the first slide before we get to Aaron's question, it appears there's quite a difference between your, there you are. Always interesting, when we go back to the full screen, I see you jump to a different place. I was looking at you. There's quite a difference between the answers when you actually had these groups that you were chatting with versus a survey. I assume that's because whenever you can sit down with people, they understand issues a little different. I'm trying to understand why there's such a difference between what they perceive as issues, you know, what they're saying, these are bigger issues or smaller issues, and whether they're safer or not safer. And it appeared to me it was because it was one is you get a chance to talk and explain, another one you don't. Am I reading that survey correct? I'm trying to understand it.
Chair Harrington, Commissioner Rogers, thank you for the question. As the commissioners who were present, and Commissioner Treese, kudos, I know everyone's busy, attended both listening sessions. It was really a conversation. It ended up being, we came in there prepared to listen. We ended up, as did commissioners, really engaging with that group. And that may have had an impact on some of their survey responses. My opinion is I lean heavily to the survey. 421 community members took that survey. They were spread across the district really impressively. Our listening sessions, we would have liked to have more people, but I think it was 20 in the 20s, the high 20s. That's an engaged group, but it's a small group. And I think the survey was if I had to really give weight to those responses, I go to the survey simply because of the much larger community that was involved.
Thank you for the answer. It's always interesting when you talk to people more firsthand, they come to different conclusions than when they just fill out a form. So I was trying to get your take on it. To Aaron, I have a couple of questions, but I'll just give you one right off the bat. And that is that I see the projections. The growth rate for unincorporated and rural was smaller than I thought it might be. So that tells me a lot of the growth is happening inside the cities. What we're doing is we're finding our cost of insurance, as you said, came up, health insurance, officer costs for small areas that are in the urban area. I'll pick on me in Bull Mountain or south of Tualatin or other small areas which are in the ESPD, which I pay into that as well. But I have police from Tigard all around me as well as King City. Is there any economy, and would the rates change at all if we were to look at a different model as far as, and I know it's an urban service question, but would it change much in your mind, just philosophically, if we said, hey, maybe we ought to contract those pockets of, they're way away from anything else. Would that change much the numbers that we're talking about?
Commissioner Rogers. You know, honestly, I'm not sure. We didn't dig into this at all, but of course, your board raised this question when we were doing district renewal. It's sort of what is this economy of scale? And so I'm not sure I have a really final good answer for you. I think it's something we'd really have to pull on different levers to see, because you start reducing the scale and I'm not sure it reduces your costs really overall. So I think we'd have to look at that. And I don't know, Sheriff Garrett, if you have any insight on that at all.
Thank you, Commissioner Rogers. Aaron, you know, as long as that community commissioner remains unincorporated, there's still, you know, the public safety local option levy, right, still applies. It's still unincorporated. It would still require an enhanced level of service, whether that's provided by, you know, the sheriff's office or the city of Tigard. You know, my sense is those costs would be about the same, but as Aaron says, we would have to dig into the data and do some analysis to know for sure.
Go ahead, Commissioner Treese.
Good morning. Thank you for the presentation. A quick comment to Sheriff Garrett's point about the information that we received back both in the listening sessions and through the survey. I just want to point out a consistent theme was, why are we doing this? Shouldn't this be part of our base? And there was Aaron, thank you for your participation in both of those listening sessions to kind of set the stage of what it means, why we have to do this. But I thought that was really thoughtful information coming back from our community, which also helped inform some of the look forward about what we do in our town halls. But anyway, that said, I'd like to ask the question about the PSU forecast on population. Could you go to that slide? I was surprised to see that dip, and I don't know if that's a dip against forecast or if that's a dip against actuals.
That was a dip against forecast.
Okay. So that makes sense now.
Yeah, over each, annually, we try to make those estimates based on the percentage that PSU has stated the growth rate would be. They've lowered that, it was 1.75% and it's 1.10% now. And so we're just having to adjust those numbers and growth.
Okay, it was unusual to hear dip. That's why I asked the question. Thank you.
But I think that dip, what I've heard from PSU is as a result of the census information.
Right, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
So do other commissioners have questions before I go? Go ahead, Commissioner Willie.
Yeah, I'm looking at the slide of the difference between the 14 increase and the 15 cent, and now I need to go back to the survey results. I guess I can just ask the question, was there a significant fall off of support if we went 15 versus 14, or was that question asked? I can't remember what it is.
That question was not asked yet specifically. I think it was a general question around, would you support an increase or a decrease or maintain? But it's a good time to tell you that we are beginning our work with the voter survey firm. And so depending on feedback from the board, that might be questions that we're able to pose.
I think just from a financial standpoint, you look at an ending fund balance, how many months of reserves that we have in there and things like that. I think the financial picture to me would justify a 15-cent increase, and I can't believe that a penny would significantly alter someone's decisions to support or not support. So I guess that's just my comment on that. I'm advocating, I think, that we look at a little bit of a more financially healthy fund balance.
Thank you for that. Yes.
Other commissioners? Okay, I'll go. I'll start with, I concur with Commissioner Willie's thought. I think, and it goes back to a couple of slides. So let's see. I'm not sure if I have the slide numbers right. I'd like to start with the one that covers taxpayer impact, because I'm having trouble navigating the story from 2 slides before that, the one titled New Levy Assumptions, and getting to the taxpayer impact because of 2 different numbers. Yep, stop there. So the it's all about percentages and working off of assessed value, right? So what I'm having difficulty with is you have the assessed value year, and then you have prior levy projection. I think that's an assessed value
It is.
percent increase, right? And then the actuals. So you've got 4.5, which to me feels a little high, given that the UUA land area is held constant during this time, essentially. I mean, we if we're not already planning for that, we need to start planning for that because of the way the urban reserves program and moving to the cities happens much fast. You know, it goes to cities now. There isn't this becoming part of the ever expanding UUA geography. So I'm having a little difficulty about making that leap. 4.5 seems a little high to me, but then making this leap from it's proposed as 4.5 here, yet you go to, excuse me, 2 slides later, and you talk about 3.4 and da 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 da. And I'm like, wait a second.
Thank you. I believe that I may have to call on G, but I believe that is showing, this slide on our screen is showing the growth of the average home assessed value. So the value of the average homeowner, that rate of increase and growth.
Yeah, I know the numbers are different.
Yeah.
Why? Right? You take the average here. The other one needs to be, why is the other one not the same average?
Yeah, that's
the fundamental question. So it just, it bears further explanation. Let me put it at that.
Yeah, we can do that. And that was, you know, one of our questions back on the assessed value, 4.5% projected for assessed value does seem high in the concept of what just happened and looking forward. But if you look at the fund over time, it seems potentially
I can't base this off of past practice because we know by policy it's already changed.
Right, it's changing, yeah. And it is getting built out.
It has changed.
Oh, okay, thanks.
We've already seen it implemented with the UGB expansions of 2010 forward. So it's been in place, right? What we've run through pretty much the development of the urban unincorporated areas prior to 2010. So that's my point. I want to make sure we're defining
I'm losing.
this.
Is it me? Can everybody hear me?
Oh,
Okay,
sorry,
Chair
Chair.
Harrington. Okay.
No. Chair, we're only hearing about every other word. You're frozen on my screen.
Yeah, mine too.
Mhm.
Yeah, so commissioners, this is the impact of the winds going through the area. So that is why. So we'll try to work to get the chair back.
Aaron, if I could comment to the chair's question about the difference between those 2 numbers, isn't it the fact that the slide that is on the screen is residential, but your overall projected levy increase of 4.5 is industrial, commercial. It's everything bundled together. So
Yes.
while we're going to look at what the 3.4 is actually residential only, but when you bundle it all together, it's higher because of new construction as well as adding in industrial and commercial.
Yes,
So
thank
I'm
you,
not-
Commissioner Willie. I'm getting lots of good pings and information from the team, and that is exactly what some of that difference is. It is around the commercial rate and the residential rate.
Right. And I think 4.5 is, I mean, realizing that it has dipped a little bit, but I'm comfortable with the 4.5. But again, and you're grading it downwards to 4.25 over the future. I would think those are realistic, conservative projections that we could rely on. But again, it is a little concerning that it has dropped down.
Yeah, exactly.
I caught the tail end of that. The internet to my house was restored. I was just sitting here the whole time sending Vice Chair Treese a text message saying, take over the meeting. So thank you. I did catch that, the addition of the commercial and industrial land that this slide doesn't represent. That is a note that should be noted, right? Because these slides are public.
Absolutely.
So the last question that I have is just a particular note on the prior slide on new levy assumptions. There's a 20% ratio here between officers and deputies. Is that a normal management overhead? You take corporals, lieutenants, and sergeants. Those are officers, right? That's 25 out of 124 is 20%.
Sheriff Garrett, I might point to you. I know there's a little bit of a formula and nuance in how many deputies you add may point to those additional positions.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Harrington. I have to do some quick math here, but the span of control 1 to 10 to 1 to 12 is what we're working with from the sergeant to corporals and deputy level. And so we can go back and relook that and make sure that that's not, exceeding our ability on the leadership side. I appreciate you pointing that out.
Chair Harrington?
Yeah, Commissioner, Vice Chair Treese, could you take over the meeting? I'm just going to get in my car and head to the building because the internet's being too flaky and I just hope it's better in the building. I usually go into the building for our meeting, so this won't happen, but this is too distracting on everyone, so.
Yes, I will, and we'll.
I approve if.
And I'll wait to see. We'll wait to see you when you call in from the building. So, Commissioner Willie.
Yeah, just to follow up with what the sheriff said. So, so what you're saying is that the 1 to 10 or 1 to 12 ratio should be between sergeants and the other three classifications. So 14 out of 118, is that?
Yeah, so just, dividing 105 deputies and corporals by 15 sergeants gets us a span of control of 1 to 7. That seems a little small. However, there are teams like our motor officers team, our motor team. We have 5 motors and a sergeant who the motor program, there's a lot of administrative responsibilities there. So our span of control, really solid. here. It pencils out to 1 to 7, but that's because we do have some special teams that require some more focused oversight, leadership, management than your standard patrol.
Okay, thank you.
Are there other questions? No? Seeing none, Erin, tell us where we are right now. What you would like is approval to move forward, correct?
Absolutely. We would love approval to move forward. I think I heard that, there's interest in the 14 cents and understanding, the assumptions. We can drill down into that a little bit more and potentially polling for working with our research firm to look at a 15 cent and to see what that difference in interest might be. Kevin, if you don't mind putting us back up onto the slide number 12, I'll just do a quick kind of important dates and next steps of what's ahead for all of you and see if there's any questions on that.
That's great. That's what I was going to ask for. Thank you.
Slide 12, maybe. Oh, sorry. I guess it's not slide 12. Sorry, it's the second one from the last. I'm looking at an old version. Sorry.
It's actually slide 21.
Thank you, Commissioner Willie. Next one, I know, that one. Okay, back one, thank you. So the upcoming important dates, just for the board's awareness, December 14th, we'll return to the work session and talk with you all about the voter survey results. We're working with the firm, as I mentioned, and hoping to get that into the field this month. And then we'll give you some updates on levy proposal development. So again, just a little bit more fine tuning of the numbers you've seen today and what we're looking at putting into the proposal. On January 4th of 2022, there will be a board meeting where we'll ask for approval of the final proposal presentation. And then on January 18th at the board meeting, we'll ask for a public hearing where we'll conduct the public hearing and ask the board to adopt the levy replacement proposal, and that we'd ask you to direct staff to file the ballot measure at that point. Next slide. And these are just some internal dates. As mentioned, we're working with the voter survey firm right now. And then I believe this was mentioned in the report where Sheriff Garrett talked about the community survey. That final report from the firm, Great Blue Research, is due at the end of this week. And when that is finalized, we will forward that to the board and also post it on the ESPD website. And that's sort of my takeaways. If there's anything else the board would like us to work on, please let me know.
Erin, thank you. Let me make sure I understand. If I could, I'm sorry, going back to slide 21. Is that the right slide? No, going back to slide 19. Now we're going back to the fund balance and assessed value slide. There you go. So the middle one says a 14-cent increase and reducing our projection to a 4% AV growth, okay? The fifth one says 15 cents and keeping AV at current projections.
Correct.
What would be the 15 cent if we were reducing AV to 4%? So it seems to me like there's a gap in there in those two assumptions. And so I don't know what we're going to put out for if we're going to do more survey, number crunching, whatever the case is. But I guess from my standpoint, I'm comfortable with the current AV projections and would recommend the 15 cents. And that's the messaging, I think. Because that gives us a little wiggle room. So if we do a 15 cents and our AV comes in at 4.25 rather than 4.5, or it does come in at 4, we still got a little bit of wiggle room. Whereas 14 cents doesn't give us any wiggle room in that. So that would be my recommendation.
Thank you, Commissioner Willie. And we can run a few more numbers in that scenario, but you're exactly right. It's really around the increase and then our best projections on the assessed value and knowing where we might land if that comes to be. And so there is that little bit of those levers getting pulled, but we can certainly run those numbers for you as well.
Thank you. Are there other questions?
Comment.
Commissioner Rogers?
Sure. Comment. I'm inclined to go at the higher rate as well, and maybe for a little different reason. When we originally did these separate levies way back when in the 80s, it was intended to provide a safety net for not only the sheriff's office, but for the urban road maintenance. But we never really thought they'd go on this long, and I have no concern about them going on this long, but it was always thought that it would be self-sufficient. So for those of us, and I'm one of them, I sit on the backside of Bull Mountain, and I'm in a pocket of unincorporated area. And unless we choose to do something different, we have to pay the costs of the activity. Mm-hmm. And the cost of the activity in that 14-cent scenario to me is subject to AV changes. Who knows what the economy is going to look like in the next few years? It's subject to growth projections, which who knows what those are going to be. It's based upon people actually paying taxes, and they may decide not to, if the economy doesn't change a bit. So to me, this is just price it for what it costs. And for those of us, and I'm one that you're looking at, we ought to pay for the cost of what this service is. We enjoy the service, we like the service, and we ought to pay for it. So I'm at the 15-cent increase.
Thank you, Commissioner Rogers.
Are there other comments? Anything? Nafisa is good. I concur with Commissioner Rogers and Commissioner Willie. I think that this is I think that the timing is good as well. That's what we heard from our survey results and what we heard in our maybe limited population, but nonetheless our listening sessions. So I think that what we don't want to be is vulnerable. Yeah, that's really important to me moving forward. So that said, I'm looking forward to more information. Aaron, thank you for the great presentation. Sheriff Garrett, thank you for the presentation. I also want to encourage you to, and I recognize that at some point when it becomes a campaign, we have different roles. I want to call that out one more time. But at the same time, I want to make sure that we as commissioners understand what our role is moving forward when and if it becomes a campaign. So please keep us informed in that regard as well. Okay.
Yeah,
so are we thumbs up moving forward? Great. And again, thank you for the hard work. Thank you for the communication with our communities. That's what we're here to do. So it's much appreciated.
Thank you for your time.
Absolutely. With that, Clerk Moss, do we have other issues from our work session that we need to address?
We do not, unless the board members have anything. So I would suggest we take a break till about 10 a.m. We'll set up the other Zoom link. And Commissioner Treese, I would ask that you would probably kick off the meeting at 10 a.m. as I'm expecting the chair in the office probably about 10:15 or so.
Okay. Do you have like a chip that you have in her or something?
I'm just estimating.
I appreciate that, Clerk Moss. Thank you very much, and take a break. We'll reconvene at 10 a.m. See you then. And now, are we on a new link?
You are on a new Zoom link that is in your calendars.
Great. Thank you, Clerk Moss. See you soon.